Now we go over the timing of when to plant your food plots every late summer, and I think we'll always go over the timing for when you should plant your late summer food plots, because there's some really critical aspects of this that every year are missed. And and I have to admit, it's really hard to hold off planting. You want to get seed in the ground, you want it to grow, you want to start attracting a good deer herd, you want to start attracting those summer bucks that may be over on your neighbor's property. The bottom line is you're really anxious to get something in the ground, and there's a good timing and a bad timing, especially as it relates to these fall greens that you're putting in. Obviously, you're not planting corn in early August. You can plant beans, but they're within a late season green mix, and you're trying to get good green leaves going into the fall. So I wanted to talk about some of these good planting dates for you in your specific area, and why, and some of the risks that you have to watch out for. And you're going to see an overall common risk that you really have to watch out for with all these plantings, and we'll talk about that. I want to talk about late July. Should you be planting in late July ever? And I really look at it like brassica crop when you're in southern Michigan, southern Wisconsin, south half of Wisconsin, same with Minnesota, over into Pennsylvania, southern New York, and then certainly anywhere south of that. We're talking those areas, let alone Kentucky, West Virginia, over into Oklahoma, Tennessee, Louisiana, anywhere south, Alabama, that you shouldn't be planting these brassicas that time. But there is a case, and you look at a lot of these northern areas, and I'll talk about the UP and Michigan, I talk about that a lot, but it's not that much different in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, upstate New York, North Dakota, where you get into areas where you can actually literally have a frost in mid-September. And when you can have a frost in mid-September, then when you plant in the 10th of August, you're getting 5 weeks of growth at the most. We've even had in the UP and Michigan, it was in the early 2000s, I had a frost date of September 1st. That was the first frost. In fact, August was the only month there was not a frost or freeze that year, and it was September 1st. So narrowly missed having a frost in August that year. We actually had snow in July that year up in that location. What that means is we're not getting a lot of growth. So I'm looking at some of these northern areas where your frost date is only going to allow your planting to grow 6 weeks. You really need to back that up because you're trying to target at least 7 to 8 weeks. The problem is in these areas, northern areas, northern Wisconsin, UP, Michigan, northern Michigan, upstate New York, again, these northern areas, that if you plant too early, you're getting into drought. July is a great time for drought. And I remember a time where we had 9 weeks of less than an inch of rain. Even the clover fizzled out from the spring. We didn't have enough rain, and when you add dry soils, which is common in a lot of poor soil, sandy soil, northern areas, then it makes the problems even worse, magnifies the problems of no rain, let alone the lack of soil and growth and potential volume of growth that's affected by poor soils in some of these northern areas. And obviously they're not farming in a lot of these areas. Obviously if there's farming in some of these areas, you have decent soil, but they're not farming in a lot of these locations for a reason. Poor soil gives you poor volume, and when you combine early frost, then you need to back that date up. The problem is, again, when you go too far into July, then you're risking drought. So what I like to watch in these areas where you're planting either the brassicas, the green blends we talk about, then, and we're not talking about grains. That's a completely different, and we're going to talk about that number 5 down here. That's a month after this time frame. So you can add 5 weeks to this, 4 to 5 weeks, even 6 weeks to this planting time that we're talking about for brassicas and greens. And I'll talk about like my green blend and my own personal seed food plot company. The green blend we have, I got rid of the oats. I haven't planted, we have a WHS blend that Northwoods Whitetail sells, a good friend John. And it's a great mix, but I don't plant that mix like it's planted with oats and peas and beans. The beans have a hard time germinating if you're doing a lot of no-till. The peas are great in the mix. The oats, the problem is if you put enough for your peas, meaning you want 50 peas per acre, 50 pounds of peas per acre, 75 pounds of peas per acre, then you're putting out too much oats that are in the mix. So then the oats drowned everything out at this planting time. And that's one of the reasons you plant grains separate. It works when the oats are just a cover crop, where it's 20, 30 pounds per acre total in the mix. Then it's sporadic, it's not drowning everything out. But the problem is when you put out enough beans and peas, you're getting a lot of oats in that mix. So in this mix right here, we plant in bigger bags. 25 pounds is a third of an acre. This is a 4-pound bag right here. But I'm putting the perfect blend of peas, tillage radish, and buckwheat. Those are all greens for that time of the year, and certainly not greens that we want to plant in September. If we're planting those in September, then we're getting the buckwheat frosted out and the tillage radish doesn't get enough time to grow, and then you're not getting volume on your peas. So really need to back this up. So it's a perfect combination with our brassica blend. That's why we have these two out right now. So you're putting these out early. When you get those out July, these brassicas, the peas, they're a legume, and then also the buckwheat. Buckwheat is pretty tolerant of lack of moisture, but then the tillage radish just the same as brassica. It's a brassica variety or type. The problem is when you get those in early and you get no rain, they fizzle out and dry up. So what I'm looking for mid-July in these areas is I'm looking at the forecast to show appreciable rain. We just started getting some rain here in mid-July, and we're getting towards the end of July now, but some of these northern areas are just starting to get rain. So when you see that rain, you can't miss it that time of year. You're taking a gamble, because if you don't get rain after this germinates for 10 days, 2 weeks, then it's going to fizzle out and die, especially a lot of these quality greens. So you really have to get a little lucky and definitely back that date up, and then also plant when you see moisture in the forecast for an extended period of time. You can't miss that. Early August, we're looking at this area, early to mid-August. I'm in southeast Minnesota, southwest Wisconsin, southern Michigan, Pennsylvania, over into southern New York, South Dakota, maybe even southern North Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa. That covers that first 2 weeks of August that you'd want to plant in those locations. And so I'm looking at that. Again, it all boils down to moisture, but if we're not getting frost till mid-October, we have plenty of time to grow. Even if we plant something in mid-August, there's a chance we get some frost early October, but that's like a 1 in 15 years or 20 years. And to be honest, planting down here since 2002 in the southwest Wisconsin, we haven't had that early frost, where we had an early killing frost to stop these brassicas, but more than maybe one time at the most in 20, 21 years of planting. So we don't get that very often. But that's that perfect time frame for those states right there. The cool thing about when we get into August is the rains are increasing. You get those August thunder showers, but then as the seasons progress, as the months progress and the weeks progress, we're getting more and more moisture as it heads into the fall. So if you get a good catch, you get a good germinating catch. I haven't seen really where it's dried out after that. Now, when you go over into Montana and you go out west, Wyoming, some of those areas where I have some of those clients out there, then they start to get into that drought period in August, September. So you might want to push off your grains until that time, and you're diminishing your use of some of the greens depending on your location and your arid patterns for that time of year. So you really have to watch that rain. Again, it boils down to rain. And then mid to late August, even early September, you're in that period of Kentucky, West Virginia, and South. Kentucky, you can even go mid-August, third week of August. But when you get down to Louisiana, Alabama, you're really looking at more of our early September planting, Georgia. And then you want quick growing too, because you have a lot of drought that time of year in some of these locations. And you can even think about west. We have, in our brassica blend, for example, we have a really high dose of tillage radish. That's why it's more costly than some of John's blends. Our green blend is a lot more costly too, because we're adding more buckwheat in there, which is a great early season crop. We don't expect it to be around in October, November, end of October, November after that first frost. That's why we layer cereal grains on top of that green blend about 5 weeks after planting for the time that's specific for your area for those greens. And that's what you look at down south. This is a quick growing brassica blend, and it has the base of some older or longer growth turnips that'll be around later in the season. But really that tillage radish, that's a huge portion of the brassica blend. And then we have some forage rapes and turnips. They're all quick growing. Tillage radish is very quick growing. So we're looking at good soil boosting properties. And then at the same time, you have that early season to mid-season, late season growth pattern with a blend like that. And that's perfect for some of those drought areas down south where folks are waiting a little bit later to plant because there's drought. They might even be in mid-September to end of September, and you want something that's quick growth. Our greens, heavy dose of tillage radish. The peas come up very fast, and the buckwheat is a very good germinating seed variety in even poor soils and even in locations like that. As long as you're getting a little bit of moisture, it pops up fast and grows fast, puts on volume fast. So that's what we have these. These are early poppers, and then moving forward, they'll last into the season as well. And so really when you're looking at that southern area, your area might be appropriate in West Virginia, Tennessee, even North Carolina, to be more towards the end of August, September. And if there's drought with a quick growing variety, you might want to push that even back into mid to late September, and you're still going to get a good catch because you're not getting frost till mid to late November, even December in some of those locations, if at all, during the season, depending on the season. So again, those are some of those areas where you're planting a lot of these green blends and some of the risks associated with them. Number 4, though, really it boils down to rain. When you don't see rain in the forecast, if you can, always hold off on planting. So what happens is, let's say you get a light rain, but there's really not much in the forecast for 2 weeks. You put that out, you get a little bit of germination. Well, you're going to get, those seeds are going to die within 2 weeks if they don't get rain. So you're not going to have any crop. At the same time, when you put seed in the ground and it sits there for 10 days, 2 weeks, you're losing a good portion of your seed. And we're not talking just 10%, 15%. We're talking about 50%, 70%. Those seeds are drying out and dying, and they're not healthy anymore. So after 2 weeks, you get rain. And what you'll find a month later, your plot that you waited on 2 weeks to plant, because you didn't have rain in the forecast, will be several times greater in volume and attraction, nutrition, and it'll look beautiful and green compared to that earlier planted crop, simply because your seeds are unhealthy and you had a high percentage of them die. So it always pays to wait for moisture, even to the point where you're waiting to, boy, I want to get these greens in the ground before Labor Day in Ohio, in Indiana. But boy, if you don't have rain, it's better off wait. You're better off waiting until Labor Day. And then you always have that fail-safe. You know, in the green blend, like our Fall Power Greens blends here, I encourage you, what I've done for years, these are my own personal mixes that I've mixed since the early 2000s. These are varieties that I've experimented with, you know, since that time, that I've written about and created videos on. I go back and forth on which is the best. I'm always testing. I don't hold on to one. Guarantee these blends will change by next year. And that being said, really quick, don't want to harp on the seed company that much, but I really appreciate you guys buying. We've had hundreds of orders, lots of orders of seed, and I know our seed prices are really high. We're going to drastically reduce those seed prices for next year. We're working on that, but it shows the support you guys have and the trust that you have in the brand and the quality. This is what I do. This is what I do for a living. I wouldn't recommend it if I wasn't going to do it. And so these are exactly what I plant. These seed bags tailored to exactly what I plant based on my experience level. So I appreciate you guys paying a lot of money for these. And this is our early run. This is our test run. And we'll work on getting those prices way down for next year and offer more varieties as well. So really appreciate you putting your trust in us. But that being said, these are designed, you want moisture, you want rain. We have quick growing greens. You can wait a little bit. If all else fails, you can cover it up with 150 to 200 pounds of rye per acre. As that slants down to 2 months past the green planting date for your area, you can, so when you're getting 2 months past these dates right here in your area, feel free to add up to 300 pounds of wheat or rye. And when you get down south in some of these areas, especially in this number 3 tier right here, you're looking at, you could have a good use of oats. I believe oats are more attractive to deer than wheat or rye in some of these southern areas. But the good thing is they'll stay green most of the winter, if not all winter long. We're up in the north, these oats are dying. In the UP of Michigan, when I planted oats a lot, they were brown in November, so it wasn't really offering much to the middle of the heart of the deer season. So I stopped using them as the seasons and years progressed. From about 2000 through 2005, 2006, I phased out the oats, planting them all together, because I just didn't want brown in my food plots going into November. It was really important to keep those out of there. Even some of the cold variety, the cold forage oats that I used, they still would be brown in November. So you have to be concerned about that. And then finally, number 5, in all these timings, always remember, it's one thing to have a light amount of oats as a cover crop, 20, 30 pounds per acre at the very most in the mix. And that's the problem with us hunters. More is better, right? So we're always getting more than we should, and that comes especially in the case of oats, which is a cereal grain. Oats, rye, wheat. Same thing as far as when you should plant those. They should be about 5 to 6 weeks past these dates right here that we've talked about. So if I'm putting in my greens and my brassicas, which I am, it'll be about on the 12th, 13th of August this year. Then I'm going to fast forward about a month, and that's my projected planting date for my rye, my cover crops. So I'll add about 150 pounds per acre right over the top of my green, this blend right here that has the peas, has the radish, and has the buckwheat in it. I'll cover that up because I want that green in there to last all the way through into the springtime, and that's really where it comes in. Sure, you could plant that and just leave it alone through the end of the season, but I really like to top dress it with that wheat or rye to add the value for December warm-ups, late November warm-ups, and then certainly warm-ups during the winter, and then all the way into spring, right before spring green up. It's a very important, most missed time in the whitetail woods that you can add that green into. So those are my timing dates, and they specifically go with what I create for my own personal seed blends. And you know what, on these, I just told you what's in these mixes, a lot of them. So, you know, I appreciate you guys if you support and you buy the seed blends, but bottom line is that's why you do it right. So when we're talking about some of these blends related to what you buy, what you can find at your local feed mill, and what you can mix yourself, if you want to do that, that's, you know, that's great. I appreciate you guys watching, appreciate those that have supported purchasing the seed so far. Make sure you get the timing right based on the crop that you have. Don't mix brassicas and cereal grains together. They need to be planted about 5 weeks apart. The rye weed will stunt your brassica, it'll take from it, it'll crowd it out. It does the same with rye. Really destroys anything that it's paired with, especially in those early times. So it's one thing if you're planting with other cereal grains as a variety, but when you're really mixing it at that brassica and green time in these early, it's destroying wheat, rye, it's the same thing, even oats. So really watch your timing, relate that to what you're planting for your area. Make sure you're always keeping an eye on moisture. Wait if you have to when it comes to rain. And you'll always have successful plots going into the fall and for this deer season and beyond. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.